Okay, Brian, take it on.
All right. Thanks a lot, Thelma. Appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And as Thelma mentioned, my name is Brian Murphy, and I'm a solution engineer at Salesforce.com. I'm based out of Portland, Oregon. However, I'm in Hawaii quite a bit, or at least prior to the pandemic, I was in Hawaii quite a bit. And I work with a lot of state agencies that are in Hawaii, and we've participated in this Hawaii Annual Code Challenge for a few years now, and I'm really pleased to talk to you all a little bit about the Salesforce platform and how you could potentially use our platform to develop one of the solutions that might be forthcoming here in the HACC Challenge. And so what I'd like to do is just give a little bit of a background as to Salesforce as a company, so you can kind of put it in perspective of the landscape of technology. I think a lot of people here are probably familiar with a lot of the development platforms that are out there in the industry. So whether you're developing on Ruby or developing in Python and Java or another platform, we want to show you a little bit about how Salesforce and our Customer 360 clicks not code or low code, no code development platform can help you build applications quickly. And as the title of the presentation is, how to go from an idea to an application here in about 80 minutes after I give about a 10 to 15 minute overview. So that's what we're going to go through. And at the end, I'm going to provide some training resources as well. And as we go on through the HACC and the several weeks that are forthcoming here, I'll be paying attention to the Slack channel, the Salesforce Slack channel. So if anybody has questions or needs help or would like some additional information on how to get started with the Salesforce environment to use to configure one of the challenges, I'd be happy to help and sort of mentor or guide you through that as we go. So just a little bit of introduction here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of take you over into one of our development websites to spin up, we call it, to spin up a brand new Salesforce development environment. And I left the terminology here on the slide because you might hear me refer to this, is that when you develop applications in Salesforce, we use this terminology called your Salesforce org or your Salesforce organization. So when our customers become a customer of Salesforce, we provision them an environment. And that environment could be called an org, an instance, an environment, an account, or just call it Salesforce. And so that's what I'm going to do here first, because it's going to take a couple of minutes for us to get this brand new Salesforce environment running. And you can do this yourself, by the way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to point my browser to a different page. I'm at developer.salesforce.com. And this developer site is basically where our developer community can get information, documentation. There's what we call a developer community. So there are thousands and thousands of Salesforce developers that help each other out in their use of the Salesforce platform. And all I'm going to do here is just click on the sign up button. So this is not a follow along session, but you could do this if you want to. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in my information. So these Salesforce environments that I'm signing up for here are completely free of charge. And what I'm doing here, I'm just going to try to talk and type at the same time. Make sure I spell everything properly. Actually, I'm going to use a different email here for this account. I'm a developer. I work for Salesforce. The region is going to be United States. So I'll just go down there and select that. Postal code, I'm based out of Portland, Oregon. Go and put that. And then there is what's called a username. So the username is unique across all of our Salesforce customers. So what I suggest that you do if you spin up or register for one of these accounts, put in a unique name, and you'll know that it won't work if someone else has that name reserved, but it just needs to be, your username needs to be in the form of an email address. So I'm going to call it b.murphy at HACC 2022. Actually, I'll just do Hawaii HACC, HIHACC HACC2022.demo. So this just needs to be in the form of an email address here. And I'm going to go ahead and say, sign me up. So that's going to start in the background here. See the bebop processing. And so I'm going to continue on a couple of slides. And by the time that we're done and ready to start developing this application, I'll be able to get an email that has my Salesforce account that's ready for me. So developer.salesforce.com, click the sign up button. You can register for your own Salesforce account, and we'll talk a little bit about more what that gives you. So a little bit about Salesforce as a company, however, before we get started. We work with a lot of government agencies, and obviously the state of Hawaii is putting on this hackathon challenge. And a lot of the departments that come and put forth their requirements are obviously government agencies. And Salesforce now, as of last quarter, has become the world's largest enterprise software applications company in the world in terms of revenue. But one of the areas that we focus on most is what we call a genre of software called CRM, or Customer Relationship Management. And so there are a number of companies that are in this space. Salesforce for the last 20 plus years has been by far one of the leading agencies. And the reason why I say this is because many people have not heard of Salesforce as a brand name. And if they have, they're not necessarily sure how that translates to government. And so what our platform allows government agencies to do is basically operate much like the commercial world would around their customer. So if you think of Ford Motor Company or Disney or Farmers Insurance or State Farm Insurance, all of these commercial businesses choose to put their customer at the center of every type of interaction that they have. And in the government space, when you think of all the departments that are in the state of Hawaii, whether that's higher education, transportation, health, human services, their customer are their constituents, their citizens, their residents. So everybody within the state of Hawaii is a customer of all government agencies. In addition, the state of Hawaii works with a variety of businesses. So if a business owner wants to start a business in the state and they need to register their business, they need to pay taxes, they need to interact with their government, they want to be able to do so in a very easy manner. And then also extending this out to what we would call government providers. A lot of times that governments are working with a particular constituency, they may be bringing in third-party contracted providers to operate within this business process lifecycle. And the idea of customer relationship management, or CRM, in terms of platforms, is to put all of your organization business processes and put your customer, your constituent, your resident, the family, the business, the provider in the center. So no matter which way that they interact with their government, whether it be a phone call, an email, a public facing website, walking into a DMV office or walking into a health agency, when I show up and give that agency my name or submit an application, they should know everything about me. They should know my address and demographic information, certainly, and they should have every single interaction, every email, every activity, every type of interaction I've ever had with that agency. So they know me across all of those different touch points. And what we call this at Salesforce, and again, this is just a terminology thing, is we call it the Salesforce Customer 360. So what I'm going to do here is kind of get a little bit more into this, but also say that I do know the people that are attending the hackathon are, you might be in high school, you might be in college, you might be out of college, but are looking to get into the tech world. And just to let you know that the Salesforce platform in terms of the job economy is absolutely booming. As Salesforce has become, like I said before, the world's largest enterprise software applications company in the world, with that comes many, many companies, many government agencies, many nonprofits that are looking for Salesforce talent in order to be able to sustain and develop in their Salesforce environments that run their business. So Like I mentioned in the commercial side, everything from Ford Motor Company to Vineyard Fines to Nike and Adidas, all the way through government agencies like the Hawaii Department of Agriculture, Hawaii Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, are using Salesforce to automate some sort of business process. And so for those that are looking to get into the tech world and grow your skills, there's a huge job market out there. There's a huge demand for talent. And just to give you an idea, and this is based on a survey that was done last year by one of our partner companies called Salesforce Ben. He runs a blog site that went out to the Salesforce community to look at job surveys, and the different types of roles that are in the Salesforce ecosystem are pretty highly paid types of job positions. The very first one in the top left, or the top left and the middle left, we call either a Salesforce administrator or a Salesforce business analyst. These are usually the two types of roles that people do and to get their first certifications. And this is sort of the clicks, not code sort of portion of the Salesforce platform. The salaries that you see in blue are for a senior based role. And then the ones below that might be for a junior or entry level type of person. And so, I even have a sophomore in college. I have a senior in high school, my daughter. I'm basically mandating that they become Salesforce certified at some point before they graduate college, because these are real life skills that you can apply. These skills are in demand, and there's a great opportunity to make a great career in Salesforce. And again, I'll be monitoring the Salesforce Slack channel in the hackathon, and feel free to post any questions or ask me any questions, and I'm happy to help out there. But just know that these positions are out there and are widely available. Now let me just go into a little bit of the platform, and then do a little bit of a demonstration of the application that we're going to actually build here shortly. So again, I mentioned Salesforce has this notion of customer relationship management. That's the application genre that we play in, or the software genre that we play in. And you can think of that as, first thing that Salesforce does is what we call software as a service. Software as a service basically means that you can come to Salesforce and we have some pre-packaged applications that run in the cloud. These applications, and you see the colorful circles here, have a variety of different use cases. And so if you're a government agency, most typically our government customers are using what we call our Service Cloud application. That Service Cloud application you can kind of think of as enterprise case management. If I need everything from a broken guardrail to a health and human services case to a child welfare case or child support enforcement, whatever it might be, I can look at that case, whether it's a very long running case or a very short running case that's done within, solved within a couple of hours or a couple of days. The other applications that you see here are things like proactive marketing and outreach. Every government agency needs to communicate with their constituents, with their businesses, with their providers. And so applying marketing technology to being able to do outreach to the public, for example, during the pandemic, if you need to notify your citizens via text message, via email, number of different channels, you'd be able to profile your individuals and send them the right targeted message at the right time on the right channel of interaction. And so again, everything that we do at Salesforce is providing software applications as a service. But the second part of our platform is platform as a service. And you get this with Salesforce. So all these blue circles that you see here are a number of pre-built services that are built right into the platform. So if you need things like chat bots, you need artificial intelligence services, you need geolocation or mapping services. So if you wanted to display a number of cases on a map, or a number of service requests on a map, or a number of offices or facilities or locations on a map, that's a capability in the platform. Most commonly also, you need to do things like reports and dashboards. So once I build my application, do I now need to go out and get a third-party reporting engine, or can I report on the real-time OLTP data straight away. Other things like mobile applications. With the Salesforce platform comes a number of mobile applications that you can download straight away from the Apple App Store or from the Google Marketplace. Some of those apps are for end users. Some of those apps are for administrators, like being able to create users or freeze users if you need to do that while you're out and about, and be able to do all of this. And then all of this is built on our data centers that we manage. So what makes us different from the Google Clouds, the AWSs, the Azures of the world is that it's not infrastructure as a service. You're not going to those websites to spin up compute and databases and then have to build your application and then have to figure out which service am I going to use for chatbots or for mobile. All of this is integrated straight away in the Salesforce platform. And what that also allows you to do is take the existing out of the box applications and start building custom apps. So we can use some of the pre-built data structures that are already in Salesforce, things like accounts and contacts and cases, and we can apply them to custom built apps. And so the one application that we're going to go through here, and you see here some examples of in the public sector, these might be custom built applications that utilize some of the pre-built components, but allow the individual developer to add on more things. We're going to develop a marine animal reporting application. So in last year's hackathon, HMAR was one of the state organizations that said, hey, we need a way to be able to have the public either call in or go online and report different types of sightings of marine wildlife, whether they're whales or sea turtles or seabirds that are in distress, or they just want to report them for whatever reason. And then HMAR would monitor those reports and potentially send out people in the case of a distressed animal or whatever it might be to then further operate. And we're going to kind of cover that use case here. So the other thing to note is that what we are going to be working with are all the point and click tools in this session. So again, what we call is clicks, not code development or declarative development. But just to know that there is a coding side of Salesforce as well. And so this is an example here of Visual Studio Code that has Salesforce plugins. So if you want to do traditional development, you can do that as well. But you know, my background, I'm not a hardcore developer. I consider myself more of a power user, business analyst type person. And as I usually tell people, I can generally make Salesforce sing and dance without having to write any code whatsoever. And that's what we'll be doing here today as well. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the application that we're going to build. So again, the Hawaii Marine Animal Response, or HMAR, they're an organization last year, and I'm going to go into Slack here real quick. And FYI, for those of you that either use Slack or have become familiar with Slack, Slack is now a Salesforce company. We acquired them last year. And so Slack and Tableau, if you're familiar with Tableau Analytics, Tableau is a Salesforce company as well. But what I'm doing here is going into this last year's HACC set of requirements, and we're going to kind of take a look at some of the things here, because currently HMAR was developing their application and it sent requirements last year in this particular spreadsheet. And the spreadsheet here kind of showed all the different fields for when a sighting came in, how that they were going to respond to that, and how are they going to manage and track that information. So like most organizations, requirements are buried in all the details here. But for the most part here, what we see is they provided a spreadsheet, a Google sheet of how they're currently documenting that, and we're going to turn it into a business application with reports, with a mobile app, with dashboards, etc. So I'm going to toggle back here into the slides and show what we're going to build here. So once again, a little bit about the requirements is that they wanted to be able to enable users to report wildlife sightings easily through multiple methods. So whether that was coming online, coming through a mobile app, or making the phone call into the agency. And so on the idea was also if they had a phone call coming in, that they'd be able to operate sort of a contact center to intake the information that's coming in from the citizen or the resident that's reporting that information. And instead of just running it in a spreadsheet, they'd be able to run it into some sort of enterprise application or portal for employees. And what we're going to do here is take a look at two different personas: the mobile web responsive portal. So on the Salesforce platform, you have the ability of creating your own bespoke websites or these portals that integrate your CRM data straight away, and that are also all mobile responsive. So there are a number of website templates that we have available that you can then fill it with your content. It's linked automatically to your CRM data, so that if I want to come now and basically report a sighting, I can fill out a digital form of all of that information, submit that sighting, and even come back over time and review all of the reports that I've submitted, or even look at publicly available reported sightings that are out there. Then the second part of it is the business application that's for the HMAR employees, so that when a resident or citizen reports the sighting of the animal, how can we actually create that case record in Salesforce, route it to the right queue? There might be different workers that do sightings, that work on sightings for whales versus sightings for seabirds and so on. And then how you can maybe even graphically depict that information in what we call Salesforce Maps, in order for you to be able to see what types of reports are showing up where within the islands, and then be able to make some sort of determinations as to what you're doing in terms of reporting and things of that nature. Okay, so now I'm going to get out of the slides here. I'm going to go over into my environment. So like we said, I signed up for that Salesforce environment, and now in my email, I have a welcome message sitting here for me. So this is my email. This is my username for the account that I just sort of spun up here. I'm going to go ahead and click verify on that account. And in true, software fashion, it's going to now say, please pick a password. Salesforce 1. And then of course you get like a challenge question. So I'm just going to put in, I was born in Honolulu, and click change password. So now, instead of going to AWS or Azure or Google Cloud and spinning up containers and compute and different types of services to be able to create an application, I basically now all I did was logged into Salesforce, and I'm going to give you a tour. I'm going to go ahead and say allow here. I'm going to give you a tour of our software as a service as well as platform as a service, and now we're going to start building that application for HMAR. And I'm going to show you some of the requirements that we received and the fields that they want to track and the data that they want to track in this in the information and so on. So here, by logging in, just by logging into Salesforce, like most applications, I'm getting a bunch of like tool tips here, and I'm just going to click off of them. But just in terms of navigation, this little gear icon is called Salesforce Setup. And this setup icon, if I click on it, takes me to exactly where I just was a second ago. So the setup area of Salesforce is where you administer and configure with clicks, not code, everything in your Salesforce environment. So as a Salesforce administrator, I mean, you can call them a developer if you want to, but as an administrator, I can do things like create users in the system. So if I look at the search on users, I can drill down into users. And just to let you know that these development environments that we've given you come with a couple of licenses. And so you can create up to 2, what we call full capability administrative users. So I'm located in this environment as a user. I have a certain profile. And you'll see that there are things like profiles and permissions and queues. These are all how you set up security within the system. If I want to define a data model, I can go in here to a predefined schema builder. And so inside Salesforce, this is the equivalent to the out-of-the-box database. And you'll see here, and I'll just hit clear all, that in Salesforce, the terminology that we use is what we call an object. An object you can sort of equate to a database table. So we have objects for things like accounts and contacts and cases. So I'm going to scroll down to contacts and cases, and I'm going to say auto layout here. And so essentially, this is what we mean by software as a service, is that Salesforce already has a number of objects in our data model. And I'll just kind of reduce the size here. And you can see, just like you would in a database entity relationship diagram, sort of like primary key, foreign key relationships between these entities. And so within Salesforce, I can define new fields, new objects, and a new object would be like a database table, as I mentioned here. I'm going to exit the schema builder. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to go search for something that we call flow. Flow is our way of designing what we call out-of-the-box workflows. So if, then, else. And we've got a number in these environments, we have a number of different types of flows here that are in here, for example. So, how can I do inbound appointments or outbound appointments? How can I create a case? How can I cancel an item or book an appointment? These are example seed data for how you might operate our workflow builder. And so we're going to be using this setup window to go in here and configure a bunch of things in Salesforce. So now I'm going to go over to this little thing that we call the app launcher. This is what we mean by Salesforce has a number of applications that are pre-built in the system and are readily available to use. So I'm going to click view all here. And you see here, we've got a marketing application, we've got a sales application, a service application, a scheduler. Scheduler is, this is a setup application, but scheduler is how you can create appointments and people can pick appointment time slots. And in government, like in the DMV or anything else, I want to be able to put up a website that has an available set of time slots for resources at my organization. Well, there's an out-of-the-box scheduler application within Salesforce. And so based on your profile, you may have access to one or more applications in the system. And we have government customers that have 30, 40, 50 different applications here. And when I click on that application, like I'll click on this one here called Service Console. When I click on that application, it shows me a number of these pre-built entities that are inside the system. So you'll see our pre-built data model, things like cases, contacts, accounts. I'm going to get rid of some of these pop-ups that come up here. So in our example of a marine wildlife sighting, and I want to report a sighting, I'm just going to reuse something that's already in Salesforce. We call it a case record. And a case represents, and I'm going to click on these different views here. I've got all closed cases, all open cases, my cases. And in these demonstration environments, we give you a bunch of sample data just to see what a case might look like. And in the government sector or in the commercial sector, you see here, I got a problem with installing a product. I've got a broken structural rotator assembly, right? Obviously we're going to be creating cases that have to do with marine animals and not electrical failure on generators. But I'm just going to go ahead and click into this case number. And so the difference between Salesforce and infrastructure as a service and all, the AWSs and Googles, and we do partner with those companies for a variety of the services that they have, is that we have pre-built user interface, pre-built functionality, pre-built data model. But now I can go in here, and when I take a look at this particular case, I see things like I got a status, I've got a priority, and if I edit this record here, I've got pre-built UI for things like pick list values, right? How did this case come into us? It came in via the phone or via the web. What is this case regarding? It's regarding mechanical or electrical or structural. Now, obviously, we want to change this. Instead of being about mechanical stuff, this is going to be about marine animals. And so we might have come in here and change this type. What type of case is it? It might be a marine life case, or it might be a seabird or sea turtle or whales, and put this information in these fields in the system. We're not concerned with products and liability, but you see just again some example data fields, example data model here. So if I were calling the HMAR organization to basically report a marine sighting, I already have a pre-built application that I can start with called Service Cloud, and I can just click New Record, and I can fill out information about that marine animal. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to add some fields. We're going to change some fields. And then in order to save time, because this is only an hour-and-a-half session, I'm going to actually go over and show you most of the fields in that spreadsheet that HMAR gave us in last year's hackathon, and show you how I've configured that. So I'm just going to kind of show you some concepts here. Then I'm going to go into another environment where I've already kind of pre-configured some of the data model and show you how that was done. And so let's say, for example, and I'm going to go over here into my spreadsheet. This is a spreadsheet that was provided by HMAR last year. And down here, you see like turtle responses and seabird responses. But we've got some fields in here, like, what was the date that it was reported? What time was it reported? Who is the person that took in the report? The ticket type, the observer. And when you look at these down arrows here, you're going to see that they have different codes, R versus C. Observer type, right? VPAF. And these all had translations to what the values meant. And they put that in the Slack channel last year. Where is this located on what island? What sector was it located in? What branch or location, etc. So some of these are text fields. Some of these are pick list fields. Some of these might be, number versus text versus formulas, etc. And so this is kind of like the starting point here for the data model. Was outreach provided by the operator, number of received calls, notes, etc. So what we're going to do here is kind of go over into Salesforce now and say, well, what if I want to change the status and have different values, or I want to put a type and a subtype in the data model? So as a administrator of the system, I can go into the setup area. So I'm going to go into setup, and I'm going to go to what we call our Salesforce object manager. And I was working on the case object. Now, this is a list. Essentially, these objects, again, they translate to like database tables, assets, campaigns, contacts, accounts, cases. So if I drill down in the case entity or the case object, I now have the point and click tools to build more logic, more user interface, more information. And I'm not going to get into every single one of these here. I'm going to kind of do the basics here to show you the kind of core activity that you would do as a developer. So I'm going to drill into this thing called fields and relationships. So right now in this out of the box case object, you can see that I've got a bunch of fields that I have that are in this object by default. Some of them I just might want to redo. Some of them I may want to create brand new in the system. So if I go back over to my spreadsheet over here, I might say here, type of turtle. And I had a couple different options here, CMEI or unknown. So what I'm going to do here is come into this fields and relationships. I'm going to click new. I want a new field. And then in Salesforce, you have a menu of what types of fields do you want to create in the system. I've got formula fields, auto numbering fields. So if your service request had to have, or a case had to have a certain nomenclature for how you number your cases, you can create these different auto number fields, checkbox, currency, date and time, email. And then we've got things like pick list, single value pick list versus maybe multi-value pick list. So I'm going to go ahead and select it's a pick list, click next. And when we develop new fields in Salesforce, this is just like coming in here and walking through a wizard in order to do this. So I'm going to put in turtle type, if I can spell correctly. And I'm going to enter the set of values. So what I'm going to do here is go back to this set of requirements, and I'm going to look at CM, EI, and unknown. So CM, EI, unknown. And I can display them alphabetically if I want to. I can use the first value as a default. And you'll see here, every new custom field that I create in Salesforce also has what we call an API name. So every single entity, meaning every object, every field in Salesforce, has a way in which you can interact with it via APIs as well. So if you're calling or pushing data into Salesforce from another system, it knows that this particular field would be the contact entity, the turtle underscore type field name that you're putting it into. Help text here is a way for you to obviously give information to the end user. Please indicate the type of turtle the sighting is about. And I can make it required, not make it required, etc. And I'll just go ahead and click next. The next screen is what we call field level security. So every user in Salesforce, whether they're a public facing user, like a consumer or person from the public, or any internal user, has what we call a profile. And so we have some out of the box profiles. You can create your own profiles. So if I am a HMAR manager versus an HMAR volunteer versus an HMAR worker, I can create those profiles and then say this field is visible to just these profiles that I select. And it could be read only to the profiles that I select. So for demo purposes, I'm just going to make this field visible to everyone. Click next. And then you'll see within Salesforce, we have this notion of user interface. We call them layouts. And so the nice thing is that I can add this field to a form in the user interface layout, and I have different types of layouts for the same record of data. So if I'm a manager, I might see all 50 fields on the case object, but if I'm a volunteer, I may only see 10 fields on the case object that I can see. And so I'm just going to add this to all of these different layouts. I'm just going to go ahead and click save. The next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create another new field, and I'm just going to do 2 fields here to show you the concept. And I'm just going to call it other notes as an example, because I want to put this narrative in here in the other notes field. So I'll scroll down here and I will select a number of different text fields. I've got long text, rich text, text area, etc. Rich text will give me a very big field in which I can bold and underline things. So I'm just going to go ahead and say rich text, and I'm going to call it other notes and say, please add any notes to the sighting you need. I'm going to go ahead and click next. I'm going to make it visible to everyone. Click next and click save. So now that I've created those 2 fields custom, those are brand new fields that never existed before. And if I scroll down to the list of fields, you'll see that I've got a field called turtle type, and it's called turtle type underscore underscore C. This underscore underscore C means that it is a custom field that you created on this existing entity. And so now when I go to page layouts, here's where I can edit the user interface to where I want to position those fields on the page. Because right now, if I go over to my, where is it here? If I go over to my cases view and I drill down on this case number, click on the details here, what we're going to see is I've got some information about where those fields are on the page. I got these 2 columns in this area, and I want to change the layout of this area. So what I'm going to do here is go into this thing called case layout. And you'll see here sort of a design time way for me to show you where by default, it placed this particular field in a particular location. So what I could do here, and over here, I've got the other notes that I had. This is a layout designer in which I can drag and drop fields and move them to different locations on the page, and depending on where I want the solution to be or where I want those fields to be. I can even create additional sections. So if I drag and drop a new section, I'll just call this as an example, HMAR attributes. And I'll make it a 1-column section instead of a 2-column section. And I'll add my other notes in there. And I'll add the turtle type as well into that item here. I'm gonna go ahead and save it. And now when I go back to the Service Console application, I should be able to go to the cases entity here and create a new record. And as I scroll down the different section here, you'll see that I've got those new HMAR attributes here. The first one is a pick list of a couple different items with the help text that we indicated, as well as I have the other notes field here to please add any additional notes to the citing. And here I have the ability of putting in rich text. I can bold it, underline it, do whatever I need to. And so the concept is in Salesforce, just when I spin up a brand new developer edition environment, I already have business entities, we call them objects. I can click on the contact object. The contact object represents people in the system. So in this case, I've got a contact, Rose Gonzalez, with some default information. I have some additional details about her profile, all her demographics, her address, etc. And now when I go to the case object and click new case like I just showed you, I have a way of doing a new citing or a new report to that particular agency. And so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to exit this particular environment, and I'm going to go into an environment that I've already sort of pre-configured and show you the concept here of that marine animal wildlife sighting app more built out in the system. So I'm going to go over into the other environment. And one of the things that I did is instead of calling it the Service Console app, I'm going to go into this app picker here. I created a new app in Salesforce called the Hawaii Marine Animal Response app. And so when I click on that app, it now takes me to the home page, and it shows me the entities that we have here. And if you were noticing in that last demo, all of these entities are exactly the same that were in the out-of-the-box Salesforce. The only thing that I've done in this demo is I've added more fields to the case object to be more representative of marine animal wildlife sighting. So I'm going to go into my case object in this environment. And now what you're going to see is when I create a new case, so if someone reports a new marine animal sighting, I'm going to put in the subject, okay, sea turtle. This is an out-of-the-box field here, sea turtle in distress. I can put in a description, caught in netting. Status is new, priority is medium, and now I can say who's the person that's reporting this item. So if that person called into my agency here, I can do a quick search of existing contacts that are in our database. And if I don't find somebody named Fred, well, there's a Fred Jones. I didn't even hit enter yet, and it's already searching for someone named Fred. I'll type for someone named Cindy. It doesn't find them in the contacts. So if your search does not end in a result, so if I search for all Cindys in the system, I didn't get a hit, I can instantly create a new contact here or a new person record as they're reporting it. So I can say, okay, sir, would you like to give me your name, fill out that information, or I can pick an existing person like Lauren Boyle here. How did Lauren call? She called in via the phone in this scenario. And now I've created a section called animal details. And you have the ability of doing things like what we call multi-value, or I should say dependent pick lists. So if I say that it's regard to marine life and the subtype is a sea turtle, I might have a different animal code. So what you see here is I've got a Maui turtle or an Oahu turtle. If I were to select a dolphin, I might have a different code here for Maui, spinner, and striped dolphins. If I have a seabird, the spreadsheet that they gave us last year had a bunch of different codes for different types of birds in the system. So in Salesforce, you can create hierarchical pick lists. We call them dependent pick lists. And so now if I report a seabird, and again, these are all the fields that were in the spreadsheet. What was the size of the animal, adult, juvenile, pup, etc.? What sector was it in? It was in North Sector. What beach position was it in? It was on land. Animal status is alive or dead. And then you've got things like multi-value pick lists. So what was apparent on that particular animal? And is there a tag number? Yes, there is a tag number. We got a red one. Tag location and marking notes. The tag was on the tail, and I'm going to go ahead and click save. Now, before I click save, I'm going to show you here that this field has nothing in it. It's not required to fill out. There's no red asterisk here, but I'm going to go ahead and click save. In Salesforce, we have the ability of creating what we call data validation fields that are conditional. So if you identify a tag as an identifying mark here, you must add some additional marking notes. And so this is another way to enforce your users to be able to put in required information, kind of like a conditional required field. So tag on tail. Now I go ahead and save it. And so the idea here is that within Salesforce, I've just created a record of information. Essentially, this is the out-of-the-box case object. However, I've added some custom fields to identify markings and animals and things of that nature. Some additional capabilities that we have that are available from our open source library, which I'll talk about, that we call App Exchange, as well as other developers that are developing components in Salesforce, is what if, for example, that I want to either type in an address and location, or I could use a very cool and quick map component and specify if I was on the phone with that individual and they say, oh, I was over near Diamond Head and I saw that particular turtle over here and it's at 3415 Diamond Head Road. So when I click on that, it's going to populate the address automatically as well as the geolocation and put the pin on the map. And so now I have the ability of going through and being able to report on this information straight away. So this is case number 1069. If I go back to my home page here, and that was for, I thought it was page 10, or turtle 1069. This is for a seabird. The other thing within Salesforce is we have reporting and dashboarding and analytical capabilities that are built right on the transactional data store. So as long as the data is in Salesforce, so what we should see here is we've got some sea turtle populations. I've got sea turtles here, status new, I've got 4. I've got 1 working. So now if I come in here and I refresh that data or that chart, that dashboard, I now have some additional items that are here in the system. And so what we can do is that based on this being a seabird, I've got an additional item here. So if we drill down into the new status, look at 3 seabirds, I drill right down to that particular piece of information, and I've got number 1069 that's here, the turtle distress caught in the netting, and I can drill right to detail within the system. So reports and dashboards are a native component right within Salesforce. So we can go from the high level dashboard, configure reports and dashboards, hover your cursor over just to get the counts, etc., and then dive right to the detail by going to those different areas. Now, this is great for people that want to call in and report these particular sightings, right? So I've got a data model with all the fields that I'm tracking about our marine wildlife and sightings, and I call into the agency. Another component of Salesforce, since we're a CRM tool, and you'll see down here in this toolbar, is that there are a variety of toolbar components that are part of our system. So one example might be that someone calls in, we have computer telephony integration built into Salesforce. So if someone were to call in and we recognize their phone number, we can automatically screen pop that individual's record into Salesforce to the agent that's receiving that data. And now I see that a phone call has come in from Lauren Boyle. I immediately see, by putting Lauren Boyle at the center of my universe, how many cases that she submitted over time. I see how many activities or emails or phone calls that we've had with her over time. And I have a complete history of everything that's gone on with her throughout that interaction with her. Now what we're going to do is take a look at, well, what if we need to be able to produce a website that allows someone to come in and report that animal via a self-service web page? And so I'm going to show you the end result first, and then I'm going to go in and show you how this website can be configured to quickly be able to pull this data into a public-facing website to be able to make it available to you in a mobile web responsive manner. So I'm going to go over to this portal here that I configured. And by the way, this is the original HMAR website. This is HMAR's website today. If I take a look at the website and you scroll down their website, you'll see that they want to report a sighting. So last year they did this example in the hackathon, but it doesn't look like even still that they've implemented anything, because when I click report a sighting, the only way to report a sighting is to make a phone call to their agency. So whether it's a monk seal, a sea turtle, a seabird, etc., I can donate to them if I want, but I have to call them in order to do that. So we're using this website here as inspiration, but I want to create a self-service website with a form on it in which I can do that animal reporting capability. And so I'm going to show you the end result that I configured in Salesforce, and then show you the behind the scenes of how this portal website was created. And again, you can do this. This is a real URL. I'm going to post this to the Slack channel after this demo. That this URL you can go to, and you all can report a sighting. And so right now, I go to the website. I kind of stole some of their graphics off the website. I kind of came up with my own metaphor that we wanted to be very, very simple here. And I'm going to go report a sighting, and then I'm going to view all the sightings that have been reported, because it's a public-facing website. We want to be transparent to the public and have them view that information. So I'm going to drill down into this button here, or this tile called report a marine animal sighting. And so again, I kind of stole some of their graphics, and then I've got this form down below with that same map that we saw a second ago when I was an agent, or an HMAR employee, and I put the pin on the map myself. But now the individual might come over here, and maybe I'll go in sort of the same area, and I'll designate that, hey, I saw, instead of a seabird, it's now going to be a turtle or a whale. So I'm going to say that I saw some marine life. I've got my dependent pick list here that I saw let's do a monk seal, I guess. Put in a description, monk seal in distress, caught in nets on the beach, whatever it might be, and then I can upload an image. So one thing before I go any further as well is, if I just shrink my browser window here, just to show that this is all mobile web responsive, right? So the template of this website that we have, we give you mobile web responsive templates. And so when you display it on a browser, on a cell phone, whatever, it's going to work just fine. So I'm just going to go pick an image. I'm just going to pick an image off of my desktop here. And I'm going to click next. So as part of this public reporting, notice here, it's like report anonymously or provide your contact details. You know, I'm logged in as myself here, but I'll just make up Fred Flintstone. I'll make up a brand new person here at and make up a phone number. Click next. It gives me sort of a summary page where you're reporting it, and I can go ahead and confirm that submission. And so now that we've completed our form, that we've submitted it, if I'm a public individual, a citizen, I can always go back to the home page or click this tab here called View All Sightings. And what this allows me to do is interact with that map and look at public data. So the idea here is that we want to have anybody come to our website and be able to look at all of the marine life monk seal reportings within an area. And now I've got some pins on a map that reflect these different values that are in the database. And if we click on these different items here, we can drill. There's several pins in here. There's several times that we've done this. And so these components that you see here, these maps and the CRM data that I'm exposing here are what we call open source components. And the way that you can be a developer in Salesforce and contribute to the sort of the Salesforce community is through what we call our App Exchange. So I'm going to open up another tab. I'm going to go to the App Exchange. And in Salesforce, the App Exchange is much like if you go to the App Store for your iPhone or you go to the Google Marketplace for your Android phone. And in Salesforce, because we're a widely used platform, you can download different applications, different components, different widgets, different tools. So if you want to incorporate DocuSign into your app, you can go to the DocuSign listing and install DocuSign. If you want to show a timeline, I did a recent search here. So there's a component called a time warp, which essentially is within Salesforce, I can display data on a timeline. And in this example, it's everything on this account shows me in a horizontal timeline. Every activity, every email, every task, every meeting that we've had with that account can show on a timeline. And all I need to do to use this component in my Salesforce is to download the component and put it into my environment. So if I click Get It Now, now some of these components are free, some of these components that you pay for. I'm not going to go ahead and do this now, but you need to log in to your account, which is based on your username and password, and you can go ahead and install that into your Salesforce environment. A second way of getting these components are being like an open source developer. And I can post these components on GitHub, or I can post these. Now, this is a map component. It's a map component with a list component down here. And one of my coworkers here at Salesforce, a guy by the name of Troy Hedges, I'm going to his GitHub site, and he's built a number of components that just snap right into your Salesforce environment. So if I click on this PSS 311 service request component, he's got a description here of that component that I use to report the sighting. So there's a little bit of a description, there's a little bit of some information here, and then you just got a one button deploy to Salesforce button. So once I deploy this component to my Salesforce environment, when I come into my Salesforce environment here, and I go back to I'm going to go to my case as an example. I'm going to drill down. There's that Fred Flintstone case, by the way. So that record was submitted. And if I just do a quick, let me just do a quick refresh. So I'm going into that Fred Flintstone component, and you see that we submit it from the online. I've got the different data point here. But the other thing that you can do as an administrator is I'm going to click Edit Page. Editing a page, like the case layout page, allows me to use in Salesforce drag and drop components that I can drag to the page and change the layout, change the behavior, add additional components. And so Salesforce gives you a number of what we call standard components out of the box, or I can go to the App Exchange and download some components or use some custom components. And so my buddy Troy has this component called 311 service request intake, as well as some of these other ones. The PS just designates in his nomenclature that he built this for the public sector, but there's a number of components that we download from the App Exchange, and I can come in here and I can add, maybe I want to add a new tab on here called Big Map. So I come in here, I add a new tab. I'm going to specify the properties here called Big Component, or Big Map actually. Let me just go create custom Big Map. Click done. Now I can click on that tab and I can drag and drop that component right to the page. And that component has behavior, has functionality. And if I also want to, maybe I want to add another tab here. Notice how the attachments are at the top corner here. Maybe I want to put the attachments in its own tab and I'll just call it files or call it attachments. I have a out of the box one here. I'll just called files. Maybe I'll call it associated files. Associated files, I click on that tab and I just drag and drop that component to that box, and I can go ahead and save the page. So once I save the page, go back and look at it at runtime. And again, the people that are allowed to edit the page like that would be an administrator, right? It's not going to be your end user. So now I've got this big map component on the page. I can report a new case right here. And I can also look at the associated files that are on a different tab now. And I've removed it from the top right corner and dragged and dropped it to the left corner. So with the time I have left, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go show you now how we built that public facing web portal and how you can quickly build portals within the Salesforce environment and then make it available on the public page or the public internet. So within Setup, I'm going to go into Setup as a developer, as an administrator, and I'm going to say, let me go to, and in Salesforce, the terminology that we use for these websites is just there's an area called sites. So we have these sites, we have these digital sites, all sites that we can create. And notice here that I have the ability of creating in any Salesforce environment, I can create up to 100 websites. And I should say they have to be 100 active websites. So some of these you notice are active, some of them are in preview status. And the way that I build a brand new website is obviously just clicking the new button. And what that's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to go in and define the beginnings of a new Salesforce, what we call experience site. Experience Cloud is the name of our product. The Experience Cloud will let you build websites and make them available to partners or the public or anybody for that matter. And now you can click on different sort of templates here and kind of read about the template to determine, oh, do you want the customer service template? Do you want a B2C, business to consumer commerce template? Do you want a help center template? The help center might just be like an online knowledge base of knowledge articles, things of that nature. So we give you a bunch of these pre-built templates. And I'm not going to go ahead and spin up a new template here because this takes like 3 or 4 minutes. But what I'm going to do here is go back and just exit out of this little thing. And I'm going to go back and pick the existing template that I had here. And I just got to go back to the setup page. I created one of those new ones right before this presentation to show you how you can start with a blank template. So I'm going to go back into all sites. I'm going to click on this one here called HACC 2022. And you've got these links here. One is called, we call the Experience Builder. This is the declarative clicks not code way of developing websites. And so when I selected new site and I picked that template, it's giving me basically an empty website. And and now the empty website gives me a number of different types of pages that are here, but I can create new custom pages as well. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to design this much like I did that prior website here before we get started. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to show you here in the themes area. You can also select different themes that you want this website, how you might want it to look and take on a different theme, etc. I'm going to leave it at the existing theme, but just to know that you can change the look and feel there. Now, every section of this page is configurable. So when I click on the navigation, I can edit the navigation. So I can add new tabs that go across the top bar here. I can click in the middle of the page. We call this the hero image. And I can come in here to the background and I'll clear out the background. And this is where you're going to have an ability of using a what we call CMS or content management system. So I got some files waiting for me to kind of fill up in here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that I want that turtle as being part of that hero image. And what you'll see here is you got different controls, right? So I want the hero width to be bigger. I'm going to leave the hero width, but I'm going to shrink down the hero height. So if I want it to be a little bit shorter, I'm going to leave that at the maximum there. And then you've got these flex controls here that are in the middle of the page. So I've got the ability here of clicking on a section, and here I might want to put in some text. Remember, if I go to that other, I'm just going to open up that portal page again. This is the one that is, this is the one that I built that's actually live, because I'm going to borrow and cheat and steal and take some of the text that's off of here. So that now when I go into the builder, I want to add some text. Well, I go into this list of components, and there's a lot of different components here that I can quickly come in here and say, let me see if there's a text component, or it's called rich content editor. So I'll drag and drop. I want to put in that text into this area. And every once in a while, you just do a little page refresh, and you start to have your sort of clicks not code ability of coming in here and again, building your information. So I'm going to add a couple of, I'm going to change this to a 2-section or a 3-section or 4-section, and you'll see that you can sort of drag these things, these sections. I'll make this one a little bit bigger. No, I like the 2-section, so I'll go back to the 2-section, and I'm going to add a component called the tile, called the basic tile. And so essentially what we're doing here is just dragging and dropping, putting in components into the page, and each component will have its own set of properties here. And what I'm going to do here is just cheat a little bit so I can go to my notes, and I'm going to pull in some of this data. So I'm going to pull in an image off the internet, and I'm going to stick it into this particular location. So I'm going to pull in a picture of a whale, and maybe I want that to be, instead of 200 pixels tall, I'm going to make that 400 pixels tall. And I'll do the same thing over here. I'm going to use a seal image. So over here, I'm going to put in, I'm going to also make that 400 pixels. And here I'm going to put, report a sighting. And over here, I'm going to put view all sightings. I can make the text maybe just a little bit bigger, 22 point. Do the same thing on this one. Now the key thing here is I want these 2 buttons to go to a custom page where I'm going to put a list or that report, a sighting component on the page. So before I do that, I'm just going to copy that text. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new page, call it a standard page, pick my layout. You see there's different layout templates that are here, and it's not rendering at the moment. Take a second. Hopefully my internet connection is still here. I'm going to call it report sighting. That's the name of the page. Go ahead and create that page. That page is fresh. It's brand new. Once again, here you've got some different components. Now I'm just going to kind of leave this up here, but what I'm going to do is go to that component here and look for a rich text component, drag and drop it, put in the text, and I'm going to say, please complete the form below to report a sighting. And beneath that component, I'm going to go and look for those custom components that are down here. One is called PSS 311 service request. I drag and drop that component, and you'll notice here that there are different properties for like latitude and longitude. My buddy Troy, who built this component, lives in Austin, Texas. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to pick the latitude, longitude for Honolulu and paste it into the lat long settings. So let me go back here, copy that, put in the negative. So that's putting in Honolulu. You'll see that you've got different zoom levels. So I want to zoom it into 13. I want to zoom it out to 9. You know, these different levels, kind of common to be able to specify what you want. And so that page is now created, and I can preview it, take a look at how it would behave. So the components kind of render in the way that they do. And then I'm going to go back to this page developer. I'm going to say, create another new page. I'm going to call it view all sightings. Go ahead and click create. So now we'll do a very similar type of thing here. So I'm going to put in rich content editor. I'm going to say, you know, please, what I need to do here is go back to here just so I can get the size of the text that I want. I'm going to come back over here, paste that in, and say, please use the criteria below to search the database. And then all I need to do is add the different components here to the page very quickly. We'll just go through to the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and say here, we've got our PS, I believe it's the object search component. And once again here, I would put in the fields. You'll see here that the way that we configure this is by the field names here. I'm just going to kind of leave it the way it was. And I'm going to come back to my notes again, put in the latitude and longitude values. So that will be the longitude. Go back here to the latitude. So that's Honolulu. And I'm going to go ahead and click publish. Now, two other things I need to do here real quick is I need to link those two images into the pages that you see here. So each one of these pages have a name. And I realize I hear some questions probably. I'm going to pause here in just a minute, but I'm going to go back to the home page. And I'm going to click on the View All Sightings tab. And in order to hyperlink to that page, I just need to put in the name of the page here, right? So report a sighting. I know this one is called report a sighting with that little slash command in front of it. So basically now, when I go out to the public internet to test this particular site, I'm going to go ahead and view that particular page on the public internet. And I did a very down and dirty sort of example here, but this is the page that I just created. I didn't do any adjustments up here. I've got my 2 items, view all sightings, report a sighting. If I go into view all sightings, those same components are here. And I believe if I just go ahead and search, all that information is on the page, and I've just connected it to CRM data. So at the end of the day, you know, I would have spent a little bit more time going out and building this particular site. This is the one that's got a little bit more finish to it. But the idea here is that you can go through, create a site based on a template, start dragging and dropping components, linking it to CRM data, and that for the end user, once they are logged into the system, or if you make it available to the public, you can expose that CRM data. So up here, I put the 2 buttons, you know, view all sightings, the view all sightings button down there. And of course, now, once again, I can search on all that information and see the data that's in the database and have that available to me. So what I'm going to do here is quickly pause for questions. Ask anything that you want to about Salesforce development, Salesforce information, and then I'm going to finish with a couple of resources where I can point you to some more information as well. So let me go back over to our chat session here. Oh, so just a basic question. What do I enter for a company and role when you're signing up for a Salesforce account? You can put anything that you want to. These developer edition environments that you sign up for are completely free of charge. They're basically like your own play sandbox. So if you want to play with Salesforce and learn Salesforce, that's what I was going to kind of finish with here. The way that you can do that is through our, let me go back to the slides. Here we go. The way that you can learn Salesforce, and I'm going to go to the website as well, is through a website that we have called Trailhead. So everything that I showed you earlier about becoming a Salesforce administrator, Salesforce developer, Salesforce business analyst, the way that you learn Salesforce technology is spinning up one of these developer edition environments and then going to trailhead.com. And trailhead.com will guide you through anything having to do with Salesforce. The metaphor that we use is kind of a national parks metaphor, to where you kind of earn merit badges, like if you were in the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. And so what trailhead.com allows you to do is go through and look at different training modules. We call them trails. And you can actually go through bite-sized pieces of training, and then it will actually have you do configurations in your developer edition environment and test them out, and then assign you points, and you earn badges as you go through. So Trailhead, I'm just going to go to the Trailhead website here real quick. So Trailhead is a way in which you can do all of this for free. I mean, like I said, I have a sophomore son in college, and sometimes I question why, you know, I'm sending him and paying X amount of dollars per year to go to college when he can learn real skills and earn credentials that are resume worthy. And so, for example, if I go to Trailhead and I want to learn, I can go to any trail, any module, any area of Salesforce that I want to learn. And so, for example, I might want to search in here on like workflow. I type in workflow, I hit enter, and you're going to get a number of different modules on what's available in workflow. So if I want to go to beginner level, advanced level. So as an example, I go to workflow automation, and it takes me through a learning where I can drill into that particular trail, and it will take me through video content, text content. And at the end of each section, you either have a try it, which it launches your developer edition and has you do some configuration, and it will validate whether or not you did it correctly, or sometimes it's just a test where we ask you some questions, you complete the quiz, and then you earn the badge. And the more badges that you get in your profile, you start to earn what's called rankings. So in Salesforce, if you do 100 badges, you become what's called a ranger. If you do 200 badges, you become a double star ranger. You show the certifications that you have in your profile. And the nice thing is too, is that you can link these things to your LinkedIn profile. So as you start earning badges, I would suggest that you put this on, edit your profile here to show your LinkedIn to say, hey, I'm a student in high school, I'm a student in university. Not only do I know Python and Ruby, but I also know Salesforce, and I've got these badges. I've maybe got one certification, or I'm working on a certification, and it will allow me to basically go out into the marketplace and show the different types of skills that I have across all the different Salesforce sort of areas in order for you to become a more well-rounded Salesforce developer, Salesforce administrator. And just to let you know as well, these credentials are fairly inexpensive to take the test. When you apply and go through the training, or the training is all free, but when you want to take the certification exam, there is a cost for that. And depending on the exam, I believe they run between like $400 and maybe $700. But there are discounts for students in higher education as well as military. So that might be something to look into. But I'll pause for any other questions if anybody has anything. Are there any questions out there? You can come off of mute. Is the Salesforce data that's created accessible as a web service? Absolutely. Yeah. So within the Salesforce environment, every one of our data structures, the fields, the objects, an object is the equivalent again to like a database table. Everything is API enabled. And we actually provide an enterprise WSDL file that will describe every single app that you have, every single field, every single workflow, everything in Salesforce. And you could call Salesforce as a service. So if you wanted to update Salesforce via a RESTful service, a REST API, or a web services API, you could do that. Would you recommend doing Trailhead trainings before trying to build something on Salesforce? And the answer to that is absolutely. I would recommend, to get started, the listing that we put for this event had what we call a trail mix on it. And a trail mix is like an example. Let me see if I can go to this event detail here. So on our, and I'll put this in the chat here. I sent it to Thelma, but it doesn't look like it's on here. Let me do this. Let me go over to the Slack channel.
Try
Let me go into this.
on hackhawaii.com. I know what you're talking about, and I swear I added it.
Oh yeah. Oh no, it might have been on the main hack website. Let me see here.
Maybe under
yeah, I got to go back to.
I didn't put it on the Eventbrite page. I would have put it on workshops.
Yeah,
click on workshop.
I think it's on the workshop. Yeah, it's on the workshop. So here we go. Trailhead. Yep. To get started, go to this trail mix. There we go. I created what's called a trail mix, and a trail mix is like a curated set of content that anybody can create. So if you become familiar with Salesforce and want to tell one of your friends, hey man, these are the set of modules that I went through, you can create a trail mix. You can add the modules and everything. So this trail mix, and I'll put this in the chat just again, but get started with Trailhead, find your way around, get to know Salesforce, platform basics. This would be a great trail mix to get started with, to learn how to do a variety of things within Salesforce. Absolutely. So, but you can go to Trailhead and just pick anything that interests you, and you can start with that as well. But this would be at least a good one to get started with, for sure.
And I
there
believe
any
that link
other?
is on the workshop page too, not just the individual. And let me go check
Me
for you guys. So it's on he was showing you the event itself. Yes, I have also added
Yeah,
it
let
on
me,
the workshop landing page. It's there, that link is there too.
I lost my page over here. Let me go back. I was going to go to the thing and put it in the chat here as well. So I'll put it in the chat for the, that's the trail mix to get started with Trailhead. So, but like I said, you know, what I did was literally just scratching the surface. I mean, you know, for the um, last year's hackathon Slack workspace, I have a recording of this. I'll post that recording to this year's workspace as well, just so you can see and go back and reference it. I know when you go back and look at what I did here, I just, again, you know, since we only had an hour and a half here, I wanted to show the concept of, I spun up a Salesforce environment in 5 minutes with a new developer edition. I went into Salesforce. There's already existing capability, reports, dashboards, existing database tables or objects like accounts and contacts and cases. But I went in and I added some new fields, added them to my page layout, and then I also created a public facing website that allowed me to report a sighting. And so when I report that sighting, it comes through to the agency and you're able to manage, monitor, and track all of the cases, all the reports, all the sightings. But some of the things that we didn't cover here was automated workflow. So when someone submits a sighting, I can automatically text them, thank you for your submission. Here's your case number, or send them an email with that same information. So Salesforce has all of that capability built in. And then I think the very last thing I'll try to show here, and I know I always say that, the last thing I'll do is there's one additional add-on capability. But if anybody's interested, I don't know if any of the hack challenges this year are going to have a mapping component. But Salesforce has a product called Salesforce Maps. And Salesforce Maps is not in your developer environment by default, but if you're interested in it, ask me on the Salesforce channel in the Slack group, and I can add Salesforce Maps to your environment. And it's just bringing it up here for the first time, so it takes a second. But what you can do with Salesforce Maps is any record of data in Salesforce that has an address on it or a geolocation on it, I'm going to go ahead and query all open marine wildlife cases. So this map interface is now doing a query of all cases that are open marine life cases. And I'm just going to go ahead and say zoom to fit. And so now what I did was, oh, for monk seals, I gave it a nice little icon. You know, for a seabird, it's got that icon. So that's a seabird sighting. There's a monk seal sighting. And I did sort of the same thing as last year. There's a dolphin sighting. And so I, as the HMAR employee, can see, oh, maybe I want to send people some information that have reported these sightings, and I can drag a polygon around these records of data in Salesforce, right click and take a mass action. I can log a call, send an email, and these are configurable too. So I might want to send a text message to all the people that reported these 5 sightings here and send a text message with this template and say, you know, thank you for reporting your sighting and we're working on it and, you know, whatever. But, you know, I can't stress enough that this is not just infrastructure as a service where you have to be responsible for creating your container, spinning up your compute resources, spinning up your database, installing your applications, maintaining them, patching them. Salesforce in and of itself is software as a service and platform as a service all in one. And I'm more than willing to help you guys answer questions, even get on a Zoom call with you or Google Hangout with you if you have questions and you actually want help, or you want me to mentor you through building an app, or hey Brian, how would you build this hackathon challenge with Salesforce? You know, what would you do? run it by me and I'll give you some guidance, and I'll be happy to help if that's allowed by the rules, Thelma. I'm not sure. But
It's not.
I'll do what I can to help.
It's not allowed. He can give you some advice and suggestions, but he can't do any like real coding for
Yeah,
you. So
I'm not going to do it
ask
for you,
that.
but I'll give you. Yeah, I'm not going to do it for you, but I'll give you some advice. That's for
He
sure.
can mentor and advise you.
And
That's what he
then
can do,
question, would you please talk a bit about how to use AI with Salesforce? Okay, so in Salesforce, we have some AI services. The brand that falls under, we have this little character we call Salesforce Einstein. So Salesforce Einstein is a series of platform services, a variety of which will let you automatically classify data. It will automatically recommend solutions. So if I submit a service request, it can go search the knowledge base that we have of solutions and recommend a particular article that would solve that person's issue. We have another service called Einstein Vision. In Einstein Vision, if I uploaded a picture of a monk seal, right, it could identify without me having to type in, or select a pick list, this is a monk seal. If I upload enough pictures of monk seals and have our AI algorithm train on all those photos and tell them that these things are monk seals and these are different types of monk seals, it can start recognizing the difference between a monk seal and a spinner dolphin or whatever it might be. So, what I would suggest is looking at Salesforce Einstein. You can do that through our help documents. One of the great things about Salesforce as well, in my opinion, is that we are 100% transparent. So if you Google anything having to do with Salesforce, like how do I use AI with Salesforce, that Google search will come back with videos, with documentation, with Trailhead modules on how to get started with Einstein AI. That's another thing I would suggest, is going into Trailhead and searching on Einstein or searching on artificial intelligence, and it'll come back with a series of modules that'll show you how to do certain things. Now, I will say Einstein AI, some of the services are a little more advanced and they require maybe invoking an API to be able to utilize some of the services. Like there might not be a user interface with it, but the other Einstein services, there are user interfaces. For example, chat bots. Inside Setup, if you go in and search the thing for bots or chat bots, you will find Einstein bots, and we have a bot builder inside Salesforce. So I don't have to go out and find AWS's bot. We could use AWS's bot on Salesforce data because AWS's bots can call Salesforce as a service and provide back the results of a marine sighting or the status of a marine sighting. But Salesforce also has bot technology, but it's built right in Salesforce. And all you have to do is point and click to build a bot versus trying to integrate someone else's bot into Salesforce. And then you have to figure out how to connect them and how to query data and how to present data and all that kind of stuff. So, I kind of call it that, going back to our architecture diagram, there are a number of pre-built services in our system here that have setup capabilities. And so when you utilize these services in Salesforce, these are all these little blue dots are just areas in setup. You don't have to go out and figure out how to use these things. All this stuff is just built right into Salesforce. Is there any other last questions in there? Let's see in the chat. Yeah, I don't see anything. So Thelma, I think we can wrap it up here. Unless anybody else wants to come off mute, ask a question. My email is b.murphy@salesforce.com. I'll put that here in the chat as well.
and there's a channel
But also the Slack channel. Yep.
Yeah, in Slack, there's a channel called this.
Right.
S-Salesforce.
S-Salesforce.
S-Salesforce. Please plan to use that. Don't ask private questions. This is, unless Brian's advising you on something. Remember, the HACC event is all supposed to be about open data and open sharing so that we make everything better for everybody. So thank you for also having that on the screen now, Brian. And thank
I've
you
already
so much.
posted. I've already posted. I've already
Yeah.
posted my slides to it, so you can see the slides, and I'll
Excellent,
post some more
excellent.
stuff in the channel
Yeah.
as well. Yep.
And this has been recorded, and the slides I will download from his link, and I will be posting those on the hack.hawaii.gov website as well as the recording once I get it back and edited. We usually throw it to YouTube so it will play better on the website. So thank you all for coming. Sorry about the hack password. Just so you know, I learned my lesson. I put it on all the events moving forward, and it will be HACC 2022 exclamation part for every event for the rest of this event. So if it doesn't show up on your Eventbrite alert that the session is starting, remember that. Okay. Thank you all for coming. And Brian,
Sounds
really
good.
very interesting.
Thank you,
It's
Thelma.
like now I want to go get the certifications myself so I can get more work for myself.
Right on. Sounds good. I'll help any way I can. No problem.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Take care.
I'm going to stop recording at this point.